Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today's Technomic Talks webinar is updating the impact of power food service distributors. I'm Barry Friends with Technomic, and I'll be taking you through this series of slides this morning. The last time we took on this project where we tallied up the results for a calendar year for food service distributors in the U.S. was 2010 with a study that was published in the summer of 2011. At the time, we defined power distributors as broadline food service distributors doing $150 million of volume or more. We've revised that criteria to include distributors of $250 million in sales or more. So the objectives today are to quantify and rank food service distributors by U.S. volume. That's just sales in the United States, not anything in Europe or Canada. Describe and contrast the different distributor subchannels, which we'll get into momentarily. And of course, discuss briefly the implications for stakeholders upstream, that being manufacturers, and downstream, operator customers. The power distributors, as I just mentioned, are those broadliners over 250 million in volume. We've got a group of custom distributors that are also over 250 million in volume. And we've also accounted for what we call the club and cash and carry channel, which are the Costco's and Sam's and BJ's and restaurant depots. So if you look at the power distributors on the left here, that's a group of 21 broadline food service distributors with combined sales volume of 92 billion, 21 firms. Add those to the custom distributors with sales of about 40 billion, 14 firms, and the 23 billion of sales being done by the club and cash and carry segment, and you've got a total of 157 billion of volume, which accounts for 68% share of the U.S. market. The total market being 231 billion. So as you look at the pie graph in the center, you've got 40% of the market is accounted for by the 21 power broadline distributors, 18% by those top 14 custom distributors, 10% by the club and cash and carry group, and the remainder, or 32%, is everybody else. Looking at the channels and the growth trends that they're reflecting, this is 2013 versus prior year 2012. You've got the power distributors showing nominal growth of 5%. Now, the accent there is on nominal because this is not real growth. And much of the 5% you see here is the effect of the acquisitions that have occurred in recent years, as that's been a substantial number, as you'll see in a moment. The power distributors have 5% growth, 2% of which is approximately gathered from the acquisitions, 2% from inflation, and maybe 1% from actual organic growth year over year. Moving to the custom distributors, you've got a 3% growth rate on that $40 billion number. That would probably be a higher percentage were it not for the fact that this channel is very exposed to QSR and casual dining, both channels having experienced softness in purchase volume in the last year, particularly as companies like Subway weaned themselves off of $5 footlongs, and Burger King, reducing their dollar menu, and the sort of softness that we've seen in that QSR channel. The real growth that's been shown from custom distributors has been from share grab, mostly from broadliners. The big success story is this third column, the club and cash and carry group. That's where you've got a lot of lift coming from Restaurant Depot having opened 15 stores and their double-digit sales growth, pulling the wagon nicely. Costco also expanding with more stores and doing quite well. Sam's Club is the perennial solid performer that they are, as well as a couple of other smaller operations. You get finally to the fourth column, which is all other, and that shows a 2% contraction. That is because you've taken so much of those members of that population volume into the power distributor group through acquisitions that it's simply a share shift from one to the other. Although it's hard to say whether there's been much organic growth there because of the industry's general softness. If you look at the top 10 distributors crossing all three channels, there's been a substantial concentration of market share between those 10 firms. It totals 57% of the U.S. market. Those firms are Sysco, U.S. Foods, PFG, McLean/MBM, Restaurant Depot, Gordon Food Service, Reinhart, Martin Brower, Costco, Sam's Club, and Golden State Foods. The other 12,000 distributors, most of those small and medium independents, comprise the other 43% of the industry with $100 billion in sales. That's everybody from distributors doing $149,999,999 in volume down to one-man wagon jobbers coming out of Hunts Point in New York. Some of the consolidations that occurred from the last time this study was done between 2011 and 2013 include the McLean blockbuster acquisition of MBM, about a $5 billion company. You've got PFG having acquired both IFH and Fox River Foods, two very large regional independents. Sysco has steadily acquired many regional independents as well as European imports, companies like Appert's in Minnesota, too many to list. Reinhart has been very active, companies such as Conco in 2011, Agar in 2012, as well as American Food Service and Southern Foods. They've been a very active consolidator. Gordon Food Service acquired Perkins a couple of years ago in Boston. U.S. Foods a little bit quieter. However, they did acquire Hawkeye in Iowa, Quantz in New York, and Glover Foods in Georgia in recent years. Chef's Warehouse, the broadline gourmet specialty distributor, public company, has been on a very steady march to acquire and integrate other similar distributors. I think Queensgate in Cincinnati was one last year. And then finally you have Food Service of America having acquired Yancey's in Colorado last year. That altogether totals about $9 billion of consolidation among these leading distributors in the last few years, which of course is what leads to the additional concentration that you see at the top of the heap. Looking now at the power distributors, those broadliners with sales over $250 million, the list looks a lot like it did 3 years ago, except that there are some names missing, as were called out on the last slide. But you've got Sysco and U.S. at the top, PFG, Reinhart, Gordon, right on down through your large, super regional independents, and then starting to get into some smaller distributors with one or two operations, all the way down to Feasers in Harrisburg, PA, making the cut. That group, again, $92 billion in volume, 40% market share, certainly a force to be reckoned with and a high degree of concentration of volume in the upper echelon. Power distributors, the tagline here is the big get bigger. Got 40% share of market. I mentioned the 5% nominal growth. Perhaps 1% of that's organic, and we know that organic growth did not occur at Sysco. So the extent to which those power distributors have grown by means other than inflation or acquisitions is probably distributed a bit more between the independent distributors and the big corporate guys. Inflation's a couple of percent, and acquisitions are about 2% of that $40 billion or that $92 billion number. We mentioned the acquisitions that occurred. You've got 8 former power distributors that were consolidated into larger power distributor members of the group. As mentioned, PFG, Reinhardt, and Cisco were the most active consolidators. Leading customized distributors, you've got McLean with MBM as part of its family now, giving tremendous coverage with dozens of concepts in their portfolio. Bauer is principally McDonald's. Sigma is Cisco's custom division, $6 billion business with many concepts. Golden State Foods, large McDonald's and Chick-fil-A distributor. Maine's, a multi-regional systems distributor with a lot of Darden business, Wendy's, Burger King, fairly broad portfolio and a $3 billion plus business. You've got some chain-owned operators such as the Jack in the Box Qdoba system. Then you've got PFG with their customized group. Reinhardt has a chain division. And then you get into the smaller but still substantial regional independent distributors like Willow Run, Mile High, Blue Line with their Little Caesars business, and finally Anderson-Dubois is a McDonald's distributor. These custom distributors, I mentioned they've got a lot of exposure to segments that have continued to be under stress ever since the beginning of the Great Recession, that being casual dining in particular, as well as recent softness in the QSR segment as they try to wean themselves off of their low-price dollar menus or $5 footlongs in the case of Subway. So this 18% market share reflects both softness in their core business, at the same time some share grab that's occurred, most notably with McLean having captured a very big win last year with the award of the Buffalo Wild Wings business nationally, which had previously been serviced by a broadline consortium of Unipro mug members. So the 3% growth nominally is actually a pretty good number when you consider that they are swimming into the current, so to speak. The cash and carry club store channel is the big success story in recent years, led of course by Restaurant Depot, as well as steady progress by Costco, reflecting the fact that independent operators in particular like the convenience and cost and transparency of that business model, being able to go and get exactly what they need when they want it. Of course, there's a service compromise there, but obviously to the tune of $22.8 billion, those customers are willing to forego delivery service in exchange for the value proposition that these cash and carry and club operations afford them. 8% growth, again, 10% share of the U.S. market. Look for this to continue growing since there's plenty of additional room for companies like Restaurant Depot to continue expansion in other markets and continue their annexation of that independent street market. We'll be publishing the full report with more details on the impact of power distributors in the fairly near future, so watch for that. And also tune in for upcoming webinars on April 29th when we'll be talking about the state of the street, look at the evolving nature of independent restaurants, as well as on May 13th, the battle for share, supermarket prepared foods versus restaurants. Thank you all for tuning in today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at the address shown on the screen. Again, thanks very much for joining us on the Technomics Talk webinar series, and have a good day.